Let's have some fun. All we ever do is talk about being ridiculously competitive, but there's more in life than being ridiculously competitive, right?
We've got 16 cards to talk about today, which is one more card than the years it takes to create a quinceañera. The video starts right now. Let me, here we go. Let me try that again. We've got 16 cards to talk about, which is one more card than it is the number of years to create a quinceañera. 16 cards to talk about, which is one more card than the number of years it takes to create a quinceañera, and the video starts right now.
We did it, everybody.
Special thanks to our Patreon supporters who power our channel. Check out our Patreon for monthly giveaways, exclusive content, and even a starring role in our fan fight series. Link in the description below.
Hello and welcome to The Day.
Thank you for spending your time with us.
I'm Jake.
I'm Joel. Welcome back to another episode of Jake and Joel Are Magic. We got 16 fun EDH cards. These are the cards you play to make your mama proud. But
That's
before
right.
we get into them, if you would, consider hitting that like button by the end of the video if you like it, and hit that dislike button if you don't.
It's a great way to support the channel, and if you want to get involved on a deeper level, head on over to Patreon, get in the Discord, get in your monthly giveaways, and all of your name will be in every video, all that stuff. We've got 16 cards to talk about today that are fun.
Let's take a look at these cards. Jake, we're going to start off with one of my personal favorite cards of all time. I shoot a lot of videos for this channel, and I feel like I always say this is one of my personal favorite cards, but this is one of my personal favorite cards, and it's Howling Mine. Every time I see me playing this, every time I see an opponent playing this, I know I'm going to have a good time because everybody's going to have a full hand at all times.
One of the big things in EDH is when you run out of cards, it's kind of just like bummer mode, right? You're just kind of like going through the motions. Now, this entire list isn't going to be group hug cards because this is a big group hug card. This is one of the cards that, like Joel said, it really does get the game going, and it's a great way to start the list. Howling out of the mine and into Shared Fate. This is honestly crazy. 1 blue, 4 other enchantment. If a player would draw a card, that player removes the top card of an opponent's library from the game face down instead. Each player may look at and play cards he or she removed from the game with Shared Fate as though they were in his or her hand.
Yeah, so it's like this kind of, you're not going to be using your library, you're going to be using their library or their library or their library.
Right.
And you just get to pick where the card is coming from. I think some people would be annoyed by this. I personally think this is a very fun effect because it's just sort of like any card that anybody plays and it's like, all right, hang on, what am I doing now? Okay, all right, cool. Also, bonus points, you can't play this card on spell table. This is like the opposite of a card that you would be able to play remotely. But I do think this kind of effect, we wanted to show this card second because, like Jake said, we're not just going with group hug cards. We're kind of going for some fun stuff where people are like, oh man, remember that game you played Shared Fate and I drew that Terminate out of Jake's deck?
Yeah, just like head turner type cards. Something that's going to raise an eyebrow, that's going to get some chit chat going at the table. Yeah, I think this is a really fun card, and I'm going to be interested to put it in one of my decks for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. After that, we've got Jake Glacial Worm. I had never actually seen this card. Jake brought this card to me today.
Weird one.
Searching your library, you can play it from your library. Now, we did look up and see if that was affected by, timing on casting creatures. Nope. If you EOT crack a fetch land, you can play Glacial Worm from your library on their EOT and then be like, here's my big dumb 9/5 trampler. Suck it.
Exactly. Yeah, you could Vampiric Tutor EOT, go grab the Glacial Worm, or like you said, a fetch land or any type of tutor effect. If you're at the big mana part of the game, why not just like EOT, grab this big 9/5, it gets through Summoning Sickness, it's ready to go on your next turn. It seems silly, and it is, but again, we're talking about fun cards. I mean, it's a 9/5 with trample. Are there better EDH cards? I'm sure that there are, but yeah, I think this is a great one.
Yo, have a sword on the battlefield, crack your fetch, you've got 7 mana open, drop this onto the battlefield, go to your turn, equip Sword of Fire and Ice, hit the blue deck in the face for 11. That's probably going to be legit, right? If anybody played this against me, and this is sort of how I judged the cards as we were making this list, if somebody played it against me, am I going to go, haha, this is a good time? Or am I going to go, I don't like this? And I think if somebody played Glacial Worm against me, I would go, that's dope. Now is it your turn now? Go ahead.
Sure. Right.
Council's Judgment is up next. Jake, go ahead and tell us about it.
Sure, yeah. Pretty basic card here. A lot of players watching this list are going to know this. 2 white, 1 other, Will of the Council. Starting with you, this is a sorcery. Each player votes for a non-land permanent you don't control. Exile each permanent with the most votes or tied for the most votes. So you're looking at a very political removal spell here. Everybody gets to just kind of pick something that's annoying them. Or, you know, somebody could decide to troll the entire experience and double up on something and exile one thing, for example. But yeah, it's a fun card, gives players a choice. Kind of a group hug card, but mostly just tidies things up on the battlefield.
Yeah, a lot of times I think this does end up being two people vote for one card in the voting, because not everybody wants to lose a permanent. But this is the kind of thing where it's like, you know, there are multiple moments every commander session where in the middle of a game you're like, does anybody have an answer for that? Because Ricky's about to win if we don't get the equipment off him. And if we've got Council's Judgment.
Ricky. I don't know who Ricky is, but he seems awful, and he always brings the worst decks.
Ricky was always Mitch Hedberg's go-to like guy name, and so I adopted that from him very early on. Was like, fictional Ricky is always the guy, man. He's always the guy. Council's Judgment, though, really fun removal. I think that everybody getting in on a removal spell is a good time. Jake, next up we've got Ride of the Raging Storm, which is one of my personal favorite EDH cards. 5 mana for an enchantment. Creatures named Lightning Rager can't attack you or planeswalkers you control. So, at the beginning of each player's upkeep, they're going to create a 5/1 elemental named Lightning Rager. It has Trample Haste, and at the beginning of the end step, you sack it. So everybody gets a 5/1 trampler every turn. They can't attack you. The game's getting over. We're having fun. We're attacking through. It's a good time.
Yeah, I'm imagining this in a shell that isn't fun, alongside stuff like Parallel Lives and Doubler Season and some other stuff like that. But by itself, again, another fun card. Who doesn't love just having 5 damage to throw at an opponent? You don't care about it. It's going to go away anyway. It just puts them in a situation where hopefully they have a big blocker in their situation. If not, they either have to take 5 to the face or start chump blocking. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, who doesn't love a 5/1 trampler, Jake? Who doesn't love a free creature card out of their graveyard?
Yeah, got another kind of group hug card going on here, but we have to have at least one black card on the list, right? 1 black, 1 other. For sorcery, each player chooses a creature card in his or her graveyard and puts that creature into play. Pretty basic. Again, it's the kind of thing where you can combine this with certain effects and it becomes very, very good, very powerful. But by itself, pretty symmetrical effect.
Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely.
Symmetrical effect. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And that's why it's great. I mean, you know, obviously you can Bajuka Bog the person with the biggest threat and you're getting your biggest threat. But, you know, I like how you said that, Jake. In combination with other cards, some of these cards on this list can be brutal, but, you know, mostly if they're played in the truest sense of like, we just play Commander to have fun, they are fun cards. Jake, I think this is one of the cards that's kind of like that.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and tell us about this one? And
I mean, it's Birthing Pod. What is there to say?
Birthing Pod, right?
It's a competitive card. It's a CEDH card. It has been competitive and constructed. This card is a kick-ass card. We are looking at this one more from the lens of this is very fun for the controller. You're getting to go and use your toolbox in your deck to get whatever is needed at that time. Yes, it is a highly must-answer permanent on the battlefield. It's going to be up there in the priority for sure because it's going to unlock a ton of potential for the controller. But for the controller, this is the kind of card that if you're building a deck with this card in it, this is exactly what you want to see because you're going to just start rifling through your ETB creatures, probably recurring the ones that die from the graveyard, and you're just going to have a grand old time.
This is one of the bread and butter cards in Carador Ghost Chieftain.
Right.
I love this card. And just like Joel said, yeah, once you sacrifice something, goes to the yard, you can get it back with Carador or a number of other effects. But Birthing Pod, you just build the deck with the curve in such a way where you make sure that, you know, you have plenty of creatures in each mana value so that you can consistently ramp up, sacrifice things. You know, there's nothing better than sacrificing like a mana dork that already did what it needed to do on turn 2 to go grab an Eternal Witness, right?
Right.
And then sacrifice an Eternal Witness to go get a Solemn Simulacrum. And then so on and so forth. Yeah, it's a fantastic card, and it does get very good. There's a reason that Birthing Pod was banned in Modern. It's just a very, very strong card, very strong effect. And when you do have these toolbox type effects, it lets you kind of break the color pie in certain constructed decks, which is why in Commander it's a little bit more reined in.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving from a brutally fun card, we will say, back to the wacky world of fun, Jake. It's Chaos Wand.
Dude, this is one of my favorite cards and kind of inspired the list in a lot of ways. 3 for an artifact where all you do is pay 4 and tap it. Target opponent exiles cards from the top of their library until you exile an instant or sorcery card. You may cast that card without paying its mana cost. Then put the exile cards that weren't cast this way on the bottom of the library in a random order. I remember an interesting interaction with this card that allowed me to, in response to attackers, exile cards from the top of an opponent's library until I found a Wrath of God, or it might have been a Merciless Eviction. I'm kind of feeling like I was playing against you. You had a huge attack, and I found a Merciless Eviction in your deck, exiled everything on the battlefield, and it was just such a random time for that to happen, and it was such an oh shit button, and back was against the wall. So yeah, it's an interesting card. Can it fall flat? 100%. But is it fun? 100%. I don't think you can really argue that it's not a fun card.
Part of what makes it fun is that it can fall flat, but another part of what makes it fun is exactly what you're talking about, which is it creates a story. Right. You walk away from a Commander game with, oh man, remember that time you had the game, you were winning, I Chaos Wanded, I got your Merciless Eviction, and I won instead. That's exactly what you're looking for from cards in this list, is creating stories, thinking about times when stuff got crazy and fun. I like about this card that it always is going to find something. It's not just exile the top. If it's an instant or sorcery, it always digs down until it finds something, and that's why I like Chaos Wand. I know it's one of your personal favorites. Jake, we've got Donate up next. It's a sorcery, a blue and 2 other for target player gains control of target permanent you control. There are a lot of decks that can run this in a brutal way and donate something, you know, the Liliana's Contract, any of the Delusions of Grandeur, cards like that. But if you are also maybe playing it from a political aspect, here you can have this, here you need this right now, here you take this, and on your turn you can eliminate that player that's given us a lot of fits, that kind of stuff. I think that Donate is a card that can definitely create a lot of stories.
It really does need to be on this list because that is an interesting way of playing Magic the Gathering. Like some people play stacks or some people play mill. You know, effects that are very much different than just turn creatures sideways. Donate really does need to be, it really is a representation of those kind of different type effects.
Yeah, absolutely. Fun effects that are different to make the game a little bit different. And I'll tell you, different, Jake, is a different way of losing the game, and that's falling into the door to nothingness. I think people are going to be kind of wonky in the comments about this card because we put a card that says target player loses the game on a list titled Fun EDH cards. Not fun to lose the game to 10 mana tap, but you got to do so much to pull this off. I think that losing to a door to nothingness is almost a rite of passage for a Commander player.
And here's the thing as well. It enters the battlefield tapped. It costs 10 mana. So if you do lose to it, then shame on you for not having a way to do something to it because it's such a hefty effect. And it is one of those things where it's going to build camaraderie. Everybody's going to kind of be like, oh, okay, well, the door to nothing list is online and they do have 10 mana. And it looks like they have a chromatic lantern. They have something that's making all of their mana tap for whatever. But yeah, it's very difficult to pull it off. And if somebody is able to eliminate somebody with a door to nothingness, then good for them.
Talking about stories, one of our trollier friends, Biff, he's been on the channel. We always mention him on the channel. I swear you could see him tap 5 mana, and then before any card is reached for in his hand, he's going dun 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 dun, and he's gonna do a theme song for the door to nothingness even entering the battlefield. So yeah, create stories. It definitely bands everybody together. I think that it is a fun inclusion in a 5-color deck. Jake, back to the wacky world of fun misfit cards. How about a card that you're just going to sort of like pass around the table and take the most pertinent thing at the time?
1,000,000% an O button in certain situations. Like if somebody's about to combo off, take whatever piece that you need to
because you can do it instant
keep
speed.
the game going. Right, instant speed. And then, yeah, like you said, it's going to get passed around and people are going to be like, you know, I need to do something about the Avarice Totem, but it's not even like the most pesky thing on the battlefield. It's like one of those type cards, but it is fun because it adds a little bit of X factor, right? It's kind of like a little bit of like a nice spice in the middle of the table. Everybody's going to have a little piece of the Avarice Totem at some point. Yeah,
Yep.
It's interesting. I think it's fun.
Yeah, I love the kind of comedy that would ensue from this one just
They're
being
fighting
passed
over
around.
it in the art.
Yeah. I don't want it. You take it. I don't want it.
I don't want it.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of that one. And I'm a huge fan of Curse of Opulence, Jake. I've played this in a bunch of decks. 1 mana for an enchantment or a curse. One person is not going to have a fun time, but everybody else is going to have a fun time. And I think that's a fun card. Enchanted player gets attacked. You're going to get to create a colorless artifact token named Gold, which is essentially a treasure token. I think if this card was created nowadays and not back before treasure tokens were a huge thing, this would be a treasure token creating deck. But you create an artifact that can sack to add a mana of any mana color to your pool if you attack the certain player that this is cursing. I personally love this card. I think it's super fun, but yeah, one player is not going to have that good of a time.
Yes, and I like the this cycle of cards a little bit of an MTG history, but this character appeared in like each deck in different situations across Commander decks that year. I believe this was 2017.
Yeah,
but
where he was
interesting
where he
card.
was on all the curses. Yeah, I really like Curse of Opulence. I think it's a fun card. Single combat though, Jake, here's a board wipe that gives you a little out, right? So it can be fun, but clear things up so they're not as complicated.
That's right. 2 white, 3 other. Wow, it's a War of the Spark card. I
Got
love
'em.
it. Sorcery. Each player chooses a creature or planeswalker they control, then sacrifices the rest. Players can't cast creature or planeswalker spells until the end of your next turn. Kind of a reined-in board wipe where everybody doesn't feel so bad. I think that some players are going to see this as a cut from that perspective. But that said, that players can't cast creature or planeswalker spells until the end of your next turn is not something to overlook, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you are just trying to make a deck to, play with newer players, board wipes need to be in the game. They have their place, right? Even to newer players, even to people you're trying to encourage to play the game more. You don't want to make them feel bad though, so maybe this is like a nice in-between option. 1 more mana than Wrath, and it gives you that extra effect. Yeah, I like single combat on this list,
And if you're in a
Jake.
Voltron type deck, it's worth saying that you do want to keep your general from being killed. So if most likely your general, which is suited up with enchantments or equipment, yeah, it's going to put you in a nice driver's seat in those situations. Mine's a glow here. 1 blue for a sorcery. This is join forces, so everybody's going to be working together here. Starting with you, each player may pay any amount of mana. Each player draws X cards, where X is the total amount of mana paid this way.
I like playing this card from the angle of, I'm going to cast it for like 3, because I'm going to let everybody draw 2, and then hopefully other people are going to pitch in and be like, you know what, I'll throw 1 mana into this. Okay, I've got 2. I'm about to untap. It's about to become my turn, that kind of thing. I just really like this as a group huggy sort of draw spell. This is back into the group hug sort of realm of these fun cards, but I do like this as a fun draw spell, and I like this as a fun ramp spell. Shout out to our patron Juniper, suggested this one in the Discord when we were spitballing this video as an idea. Veteran Explorer, when it dies, each player may search their library for up to 2 basic lands, put them onto the battlefield. That doesn't say tapped. It just puts them right onto the battlefield. Then each player who searched their library this way shuffles it. I like a creature where you're like, all right, everybody, let's get together and kill my 1/1.
Right. Yeah, this is a perfect creature to die. It's nice for filling up the graveyard, checking boxes for delirium and that kind of stuff, and has a really nice, again, symmetrical effect. But it's an effect that in certain situations with highly tuned decks, you think like EDH level decks, not everybody's going to have the basic lands here. So there's going to be fail to find in certain situations where certain decks have tons of non-basic lands or have already searched up their basic lands. A lot of EDH mana bases that are outside of green are going to have, you know, few basics, at least in my opinion and in my experience.
Yeah, absolutely. With the fun list, you know, we couldn't wrap it up without talking about a commander in an EDH video. So let's talk about one of the most fun commanders, Jake. This is a commander, much like Howling Mind, kind of like the card Rites of Flourishing, where every time it gets played onto the battlefield, I'm just like, oh, this is going to be a game where like everybody's doing their thing. We're drawing cards and playing lands, and you know, as long as the Kenny and Tiro player hasn't built it super stacksy or super enchanty, you know, something like that, we should all have a pretty good time.
Yeah, and I don't think that this card is ever going to be the card that's like the must answer in the moment. Like the 2/8 isn't doing much, but it's going to be in the back of everybody's mind. It's like, you know, there's a lot that's coming from that.
I love this as a commander. Every time anybody plays it, I'm just like, oh, dope. We've got a Kenny and Tiro in this one. This is going to be great. That's our fun list, everybody. But what we need you to do now is go down into the comments and tell us what cards we left out.
Cards that are fun, that don't get you smacked in the head, or a meanly written anonymous letter in the mail. Like you go out and you're like, oh, I got a bill, and then it's like, oh, a blank envelope, there's no return address. What's this? You were terrible at MTG, signed anonymous. You made me feel horrible and I couldn't eat dinner last night, and I'm just not doing well after the game. Because who likes that, right?
Good luck with your quinceañera, everybody.